Hello guys, so if you want to understand how deploying a backend like a Laravel app to a web server like Nginx on a Linux server like on Amazon EC2, then this video is for you, right? I'm going to show you exactly how things work without just typing in a set of commands. I'm going to walk you through each and every command that we use to configure the server so that you really understand what is going on. All right, you can't always just cram the commands without knowing what to do. Yeah, you can have a script somewhere where you can refer to, but it's really good to know what each command is doing, what each configuration option does, so that if anything breaks, you'll be able to fix it. Also, it just makes you a better engineer to really know what's going on under the hood. Right, so that is my focus of this video. So I'm going to try and go as deep as I can. Right, so hang out with me, stay with me, and then let's make this happen. Right, so on my screen now we have I put together a simple architectural diagram of exactly what we are doing in this video. Right, so we are going to create a Laravel app. Right, we are not going to do any features or something. We're just going to do the fresh installation of the Laravel app on my computer, and then and you can do it on your computer as well. And then we are going to create a repo for this project, right? A normal GitHub repo, and then we are going to also instantiate like an EC2 instance from ground up, right? On Amazon, we are going to set everything up from the ground, from scratch, okay, so that you get to understand each and every step of the way. All right, so once we have our project set up on our computer, we push the changes to our GitHub repo, and then once we set up our EC2 instance on Amazon, which is a server instance on Amazon, we can log into it, and then we can pull in the changes from our GitHub repo. We can pull our project from our GitHub repo onto the instance, and then we can have our app working. And I'm going to give you a lot of tips along the way, some gadgets and stuff like that. So I need you to stay with me here. Over here too, there are some points that I would like you to know. First of all, we are not going to do any CI/CD like with GitHub Actions or with Circle CI or stuff like that. Okay, we are going to do everything manually. If you are interested in me going to do something about GitHub Actions, please let me know in the comments, right, where we can automate the pulling process. But to explain things more easily, we first need to know how it's done manually. Then from there, we can do things. We can automate the manual process. Okay, if you don't understand how it works manually, you can't really automate. Okay, we are also not going to do things like load balancing or stuff like that, because probably in a real world application or most real world high traffic application, you have your server behind a load balancer where requests from your client will hit the load balancer, and then the load balancer will redirect the traffic to your servers behind it based on whatever you configure, right? But then in this case, you are not going to do that. I want us to keep the setup as simple as possible. Also, we are not going to use any custom domains. We are not going to have something like www.something.com to point to our app. We are just going to use a raw IP address that we get from Amazon to do this. So once again, if you want me to go further into something like that, please don't hesitate to leave a comment and then let me know about it. Okay, so this is the setup we have. Laravel, then to push to GitHub, then we set up the AWS. Right now, for the Laravel app, I already created a project on my PC. Okay, so we have the project right here. Setting up a Laravel app, it's pretty straightforward. This time around, you can use an environment called Laravel Herd. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through the Laravel Herd and how it works. Okay, so this is Laravel Herd. It's a developer environment that you can use to set up a Laravel app without installing all the dependencies manually. Okay, so on a normal day, to set up Laravel on your PC, you need PHP, you need Composer, you need some other things, right? Laravel Herd is really good. I've been using it for development. Basically, on a new PC, once you install Laravel Herd, you just have access to, and you can switch between PHP versions. So you can switch between PHP 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, and even very recent versions of PHP without doing any additional configuration, right? So it makes development on your local a breeze. All right, but that's not the only option. You can also go with XAMPP or WAMP, or depend on whatever platform you have. Valet, Laravel, Valet. There's a whole lot of options you can use to set up your Laravel project. I don't want to go too deep into the parts where we actually set up the project. It's very straightforward. Once you have Composer, you just pull it in. So let me just jump on the Laravel side real quick, just to give you an idea of how the project is set up. So documentation, I think installation, right? So we have so once you install Laravel Herd, you have this right here. Let me zoom. You just run Composer global require Laravel on your PC. That will install the Laravel installer setup globally on your PC. Then anytime you want to create a new project, you can just do Laravel new example app or Laravel new project name, whatever it is, and then you get your Laravel app. Okay, so that's exactly the process that I used. Laravel Head already ships with Nginx, so you don't have to do any other additional config over there as well, right? So easy peasy. For those that like Docker too, you can go the Docker way as well, and that also definitely helps. Okay, so like I said, this is my project. I have the Laravel app here. One thing that I want you to know, that once you set up the initial project, when you go to env, your session driver will be database. Okay, if you keep your session driver at database and you try to open the Laravel project, you're going to get a database connection error because you've not set up your database. Okay, and session driver of database tries to like the session is basically stored in a table in your DB, and if you've not configured any DB, then obviously you will throw an error. So just to remove that whole error thing, you can just change this to file or cookie or something like that, so that you don't get that bug, right? So let me, once I pop up my my browser, you see that I have the Laravel app set up here, which is properly functioning. Okay, so this is on my local. In the diagram, like we said, now I'm going to push this to so we have the code base set up. Now I'm going to push it to our GitHub, my GitHub repo. All right, and then we'll go through that process to a bit. Okay, for anyone who is a beginner and really wants to know how that works, I'm not going to spend too much time there because this is not really a GitHub tutorial. The meat of this video is with the server configuration and going live. All right, so I won't spend too much time on the GitHub repo, but just to walk you through to see how it works. All right, so I have my repo right here. So I'm going to create a new repository. I'll call it demo Laravel app. Okay, demo Laravel app. Okay, this is, so it's an optional field, but we are going to provide. So this is a demo Laravel app for deployment. Yeah, I'm going to make it public for now. We are not going to add any README. So I'm going to create a repository over here. Okay, so our repository is empty. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to connect the current Laravel project to the repo. All right, so that you guys get to see the flow over there. So I'm going to pop up my Laravel project right here. Okay, this is the root directory, and I'm going to open a terminal. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to open a terminal over here. Okay, right here. All right. Okay. So in the terminal, guys, can we increase the font size for this? I don't know whether there's a way. I'm sorry if you can't see it, okay, but then please bear with me. All right, but I'm going to tell you, you're going to see all the commands over here, right? So that, I think that should help. Okay, so I'll do a git init. So this initializes an empty repository in my project, right? Then what I'm going to do is that once you initialize the Git project, you need to add the origin where you are going to push the upstream, where you're going to push your repo locally to GitHub, right? Now, for that one, I'm going to do it off screen because it requires a bit of my GitHub personal access token. All right. So what you do is that the command is typically like this. You can do get remote add origin. Okay. Then HTTPS. So normally you do something like your GitHub personal access token, right? At github.com, right? And then my username, which is a common, right? And then the URL for the repo, which is demo-laravel-app.git, right? Now, once you do it this way, you don't have to do this whole login stuff. It just authenticates you. As long as you have access to the repo, it just authenticates you. So I'm going to add my GitHub repo personal access token. All right, so now I've added the origin. I did it off screen, okay, because of my personal access token. I don't want that to get leaked. All right, so now we are going to proceed to adding the files to. So let's do git status. All right, so these are all we've not done any commits yet. These are files that are waiting for us to actually add to staging and then commit, right? So first of all, we do a git add to add everything. Okay, let me clear the screen. Then we do a git commit. Then we add a message initialized initialized per project. Okay, so this project doesn't have anything, right? Okay, so we've committed that stuff, right? So now we do git push origin, and then our upstream branch is master, right? So git push origin master. Okay, so that will push everything we have to our project. Okay, so let's reload the Laravel app and see. Okay, perfect. So now we have everything that we need over here, to for our Laravel app. Okay, so now we are done with this portion of our project, our tutorial. We are done creating the Laravel project, and then we are done pushing it to GitHub, right? So then the next thing is to go to the more fun part, which is the AWS infrastructure. Guys, if you want me to do a dedicated video on how to set up the Laravel project, please let me know. But I'm assuming that at least you can set up a project, and I'm assuming at least there's some minimum idea about GitHub and how it works. Okay, at least you can create a repo, you can push to a repo and all of that stuff at least, and then that will give you some idea about how this works. Okay, so now let's go to AWS, and then let's configure our server, right, which will serve our app. Okay, so first of all, you need to create an AWS account. It's very simple. You just go to the AWS website and then you create a new AWS account. It's very, very straightforward. It's not like it's just like creating any other account on any other platform, right? You create your account, you get your username, you get your email and stuff like that, and you are good to go. Right now, AWS offers a free tier for its services, I think for the first year or so. So now I've not even exhausted any part of my free tier, and I'm going to show you some of the instances you can have which fall into the free tier category. All right, so on AWS, it's a cloud platform, and as we know it, a cloud platform helps us to it's sort of like it helps us to spin up servers that on a normal day you'd have done yourself in person, right? So at a few clicks and choosing some stuff, you get a dedicated server for yourself, and then you are able to configure it however you want it to. All right, now you don't have to only serve Laravel apps. You can serve C#, you can serve Node apps, you can do anything you want to do with that server, right? Now AWS has a lot of things it offers, but its server service is what we call EC2, right? So Elastic Compute Cloud, right? Elastic Compute Service, right? So EC2 is the server on AWS, which allows you to run your backend or whatever. You can even host your React app or your Angular app, whatever you have, you can do it on EC2. So if you haven't created an account yet, please pause this video, create your account, and then come back and then let's continue with the video. All right. So first thing we do is that we go to, in fact, once you log in, you come to this portion, which is the console home, right? And then when you come to the top left corner over here, you see services. You can type EC2, right? Once you type EC2, you get virtual servers in the cloud, right? So I can click EC2. Okay, over here it shows that I have 0 instances running, so I don't have any service running at the moment. Okay, so I go to EC2, and then nothing is running. A filter of running has been applied. I have nothing running. So we are going to set up our server, right? So based on our architecture diagram we have here, we are going to spin up an EC2 instance, and we are going to install the Laravel app, and then we're going to set up the Laravel project on it, and we're also going to set up the Nginx server, right? So I want you to really follow me here and then try to understand how this works. All right. Now remember, our Laravel project is already on GitHub. Okay, so we've gotten that out of the way. Okay, so at the top right corner here, you see launch instances. Okay, so let's go there. Launch instances. Okay. So the first option we have here is the name of your server, okay? Because if you have multiple servers, then you'd have to identify them by something. So we have the name of the server. So I'm going to say Laravel app server. Okay, it can be anything. You don't need to. It can be anything that makes it easy for you to identify, right? So over here now, this part is very important. Okay, this part is very, very important. So over here, every server comes with an OS installed, right? You want to install an OS that is optimized, and then an OS that is very efficient and highly performance for your app, right? You also have to think about the cost factor, right? Some OSs you install are more expensive than certain OSs. All right. So over here, Amazon gives you a bunch of OSs, what we call Amazon machine images. Okay. Now, these images are like pre-bundled asset that you can just install, and they come packaged with some things that you need for whatever you want to use your server for. All right. So there is the Mac OS, there's Ubuntu, there's Windows, there's Red Hat, there's SUSE Linux. There's a whole lot of AMIs you can use, and then you can always browse for more, and then go to the marketplace and see which one you want, right? Over here, we are going to use Amazon Linux. Okay, now Amazon Linux is there is usually a debate as to going with Amazon Linux or Ubuntu. I feel like you can't go wrong with it. Okay, Ubuntu is excellent. In fact, no OS is bad. Ubuntu is excellent. Amazon Linux is excellent too as well, right? But the thing with Amazon Linux is that obviously it's developed by Amazon, so they know how to optimize it very well for their own hardware instances, all right? And it's maintained by Amazon too as well. So I feel like with Amazon Linux, you get a little bit edge in performance as compared to Ubuntu, but once again, that is arguable. All right, you can have perfectly performant Ubuntu servers, right? So, and most of these commands you are going to run here is just a few tweaks you do when you are going the Ubuntu way, but basically most stays the same, right? So over here, we are going to choose Amazon Linux, right? So you see the summary at the right pane over here, which says number of instances, just one that we need. The image you are using is Amazon Linux 2023. Now, mind you, there was a previous version, I think that was Amazon Linux 2022. Some of the commands that we are using here, some of them would not have worked on Amazon Linux 2022. For example, on 2023, the package manager is different. On Amazon Linux 2023, the package manager that you use to install your dependencies is DNF. But on 2022, you could have used YAM and it will work, right? But on 2023, it's DNF. Even if you try to use YAM behind the scenes, it will still use DNF. All right. So we are going to choose Amazon Linux 2023 AMI. Right now, over here we say it's free tier eligible. It means that based on the number of hours that you use, you will not pay anything for the server, absolutely nothing. So if you look at the this portion of the screen, this right portion of the screen, it says free tier. In your first tier includes 750 hours of T2 micro or T3 micro in the regions in which T2 micro is unavailable, right? So these are the boundaries of free tier. Once you go beyond it, you will start paying. All right. So this is very important. Now, let's scroll to the next step. This is the architecture. Most of the time, you just leave it at 64-bit. Right now, this is the default root username of the instance that you create. Now, anytime you set up even your new computer, whether it's Mac or Windows or whatever it is, you have a user. like you create a root user, an administrator sort of for that particular PC. It's the same thing when you're launching a server with an OS. You definitely have a new user which happens to be like the default user, right? On Amazon Linux, it's EC2 user. Okay, that's the username. On if you are using like a machine image like Ubuntu, most of the time you get something like Ubuntu. All right, but this is specifically for Amazon Linux. Okay, so the next thing is the instance type, right? The instance type, we have a lot of instance types on Amazon, like based on the type of server you want to spin up. It's just like buying a laptop. We have a variety of laptops you can buy. Some with 16 gig RAMs, some with 16 gigs of 32 gigs of RAM, some with 1 terabyte of storage, some with 50 gigabytes of storage, some with 8 gigs of RAM, some with this type of processor, some with this type of processor. All right, like there's a whole variety of Amazon. Somebody who is spinning up a Laravel app, a simple Laravel project or personal project, and somebody who is building a streaming service would definitely need very different services. The streaming platform person will need a lot of compute power, a lot of memory, a lot of CPU. All right, that the simple backend project guy may not need, right? So you really have to know the type of project that you are building and think about the type of traffic or usage you get, right? If you are building a personal project for yourself, there's no need to, unless you are testing something crazy, there's no need to go beyond the free tier for most parts of it, right? And I have seen production apps that are still on T2 Micro. T2 Micro is like, it's like the bare minimum Amazon instance. So over here, you get the specs, right? So we have one vCPU, that's one virtual CPU, and it gives you 1 gig of memory, like, right, 1 gig of memory for the T2 Micro. There's a bunch of other instance types that you can use. There's T2 T2 small, T2 medium, T2 light, T2X, T2X large, and stuff like that. And you realize that the further you go, the more specs that you have. So this one has 4 virtual CPU and then 16 gigs of memory. All right, but then you realize that none of them are free tier eligible. So if you decide to go for this one, then you know you end up paying some bills, right? Now the trick here is that always start with the very bare minimum EC2 instance. The trick I've learned with any cloud provider. Always start with the bare minimum things that you need, right? For like a bit more skill, nothing too crazy, and then optimize from there. Don't start ground up from like T3X large or something like that, unless you're expecting to have immense traffic right from day one, or unless you're expecting to have your platform go viral or whatever it is, or you really need a compute power. If that's not the case, please stick to the barest minimum as much as possible, because AWS cloud cost can be crazy at times. So next is the key pair login, right? So normally once you create your server, you need to be able to access the server from somewhere, from a remote place, and then be able to run commands on it. All right. And for that, you need some type of authorization for it. Okay. And so we have the key pair. Now we do not have any key pair here. Normally the key pair is a PEM file. So if you're using like a program like Putty or some type of SSH program, you need a key pair to authorize and then be able to access your instance. Also, the key pair helps to provide your instance, to protect your instance, so that if somebody has access, finds a way to get access to the IP address of your instance, the person cannot just SSH into the instance and then mess you up. Okay, this is a very secure thing, right? But to keep things simple, I'm going to say proceed without a key pair, because I mean this is a bit of a throwaway instance, okay, just for the purposes of this video. All right, now the network settings. Okay, so for the network settings, to every Amazon resource that you do, it operates in its own internal network, what we normally call a VPC. So that's a virtual private network. Now Amazon gives you a virtual private network immediately you create an AWS account. All right, take it like having your own network at your home, all your devices, all your phones, your TV, your laptop, everything is connected on this network. All right, you can access all of these devices on this network. The devices on this network know each other, right? It's similar to the VPC. All right, so that's something that you should know, right? So that's the default VPC. Also, we have the auto assign public IP, which is enabled, right? So this is also very important. Now, anytime once you spin up the instance, Amazon will give you a public IP for the instance, something that when you open on a browser, you can access it. Okay. Now, this in the beginning is very important because you do not have a domain, right? On a normal day, if you had a domain, we could probably just link it up to the instance without having to manually type the IP. But because we don't have a domain, we are going to need to have the auto assign public IP enabled. All right. Now, the next we have here is the security group. Okay. Now, security groups in Amazon are very, very powerful, right? For example, if I'm in my room and this happens to be my server, I have a whole lot of things running on my server, and I have a door. On my door, I can put instructions that anyone that is wearing red shirt is not allowed to enter the room, but anyone that's wearing yellow shirt is allowed to enter the room. Okay, that is the security group that protects the resources here. Okay, so then anytime somebody in red shirt tries to enter the room, the person is denied access. Okay, it's sort of like a firewall, but not really a firewall. But then you get the concept, right? So it's like a bouncer, let me put it that way, that allows certain things and does not allow certain things. For example, you can put a security group that does not allow SSH access. So for the SSH access, you are saying that, hey, nobody should be able to access this server from remotely unless they are doing it directly from the console or from AWS CLI or something like that. Okay, so that's the security group. Now, you can select an existing security group with your rules. Every security group comes with a set of rules, okay, which is exactly the example that I gave you, red shirt, yellow shirt type of rules. Okay, so you can say that, oh, I do not want anybody, I want only my IP to be able to access my EC2 instance. Then that way, only your IP address, requests coming from your IP address can access your EC2 instance. So these are some of the things that we can do. Now, we don't have any security group, so we are just going to use the default security group Amazon will give us. So Amazon says we'll create a new security group called Launch Wizard 1 with the following rules. Okay, so the rules, it says allow SSH traffic from anywhere, and under it says helps you connect to your instance. Okay, so I can say custom, I can say my IP. So if I choose custom or my IP, then I'm going to provide some instruction to it to say that, hey, if the person trying to SSH into my instance doesn't have this IP address, please bounce the person. So if you're using a VPN like this, you can add the public IP of the VPN to the security group. Then only requests from your VPN will be able to access that instance. Okay. Then we have allow HTTPS traffic from the internet. I think because we are setting up a web app, we need to check this. Else, if you try to access the instance, it will not work. So HTTPS and HTTP, it's very important. Okay, else we can't access it. Right. So it says rules with source of this allow all IP addresses to access your instance. We recommend setting up security groups to allow access from known IP addresses only. Okay, so in possibly a real world situation, you will not do this. Normally, like I said, your instance will be behind a load balancer, or your instance, you just let your instance accept requests coming from a particular domain or something like that. It's not going to be just accepting traffic from anywhere. That is very dangerous. Okay, but because this is like a test project, we are just going to allow everything for maximum flexibility. Okay, so that's it for the networking part. It's very straightforward, nothing major. If you want to change anything here, maybe create your own VPC, create your own subnets, whatever it is, you can do it here. You can edit and then make the changes there, but we are going to stick to most of the defaults over here. Now, the next thing is the storage. Okay, so every instance, like I said, every instance comes with some type of storage. You can configure 832, whatever it is, you can have it there. But you need to make sure that, like I said, if you are sticking to the free, you need to make sure that you are in the free tier. Okay, so it says free tier eligible customers can get up to 30 gigs of EBS general purpose SSD or magnetic storage. Okay, so there's Amazon offers a bunch of different types of storage drives. Okay, storage engines. We have GP3, which is the most recent. That is very optimized and all. We have general purpose SSD GP2. We have provision IOPS SSD. So it depends on everything that you want. I'm not going to go too much in detail to all of these types. Okay. You can also add new volumes, multiple volumes to your instance as well. So it's really straightforward over here. So let's go to advanced details, see what we have over here. We have most of these things are not things that you really need. Anytime you see something that you do not understand, AWS does a very good job of showing you what it means. Okay, so you can always click on it and then read more information about it and see whether you need it. Now we also have the instance profile. In our case, you're not going to use the IAM instance profile. Okay, so the instance profile, there are certain roles that you or permit. Let me use roles which have permissions. Obviously, there are certain roles that you assign to your EC2 instance or a server to be able to access other things. Like example, S3. Let's say you want your EC2 instance to be able to pull some files from S3 where your images or some files exist. You will have to add some type of S3 rule to allow the instance to be able to access the S3 bucket, right? Now, Amazon AWS is secure by default. Okay, so unless you allow the permissions, it automatically revokes it. Okay, so you say, hey, allow it. Okay, so not allowed by default. Uh, Also, this part is very important. Shutdown behavior. If you decide to end your instance, or if you decide to stop it or terminate it or stuff like that, what are some of the options that you want? Okay, so stop behavior, hibernate behavior. We have enable, we have disable. You can click on it to read more about how it works. So over here it says hibernation stops your instance and saves the contents of the instance RAM to the root volume. You can't enable hibernation after launch. You can hibernate on demand and spot instances. Okay, so there's a lot over here. We have termination protection. So termination protection, once you set it to enable, then anytime you try to terminate, in case it's accidental, you get a bit of prompt and then it tells you that, hey, you've enabled termination protection for you. So you can't just go ahead and terminate this instance like that. We have stop protection. We have cloud monitoring as well. Now for cloud monitoring, it's a way to log all the activities going on in your EC2 instance, like your usage. Are you running out of CPU? Are you running out of memory? Are you running out of all of these things? You can enable it. Now, I think this comes at a bit of a cost. Amazon gives you a bit of basic login and utilization statistics that you can use, right? But if you want more detailed, you can always enable it as well. So yeah, most of these things are things that you can just skip unless you have certain specific requirements for your instance. Okay, we have license. All of these things you can skip it. And now this portion is very important. User data. All right. Sometimes let's say you have some script that you want to run anytime your instance is initialized. You can pass that script as a file over here. If it's an SA script, you can pass that field as that file as a thing over here. So immediately your AWS your EC2 instance is launched, the script automatically just executes all the commands over there without having you to enter it manually. Okay, so that's it for the advanced details. We can close it and then we go to launch instance. So let's launch the instance. Okay, so this will take a few moments. So we successfully launched the instance. So let's go back to the EC2 dashboard. So we still have instances running at 0 because let's clear the filter over there. So you see the status state initializing. Okay, initializing. So AWS is doing its stuff, installing the OS, installing packages, and all of that stuff. So it takes a bit of time. All right, so I'm going to cut to where the thing is completely initialized. Okay, then we continue from there. So now we have our instance ready, right? So over here you see the name we gave it, which is Laravel App Server. we have the instance ID, we have the state to be running, and we have the status check to be passed. And then these are the details that are provided. So let's pop this open. Let's click on this. Okay, so we see all the values over here. So this is the IPv4 address. This is the public address. So we can open it here. I think currently there's nothing is configured on it. It's a dry project. Like there's absolutely nothing on it. So it doesn't know how to even handle the request. So basically this will just keep spinning. All right, so unable to connect, right? There's nothing on it handling it. Okay, and we'll resolve that soon. Okay, and then the state is running. This is the private IPv4 address. So that is within your VPC, your internal network. This is the IP address of the instance. Okay, and this is the VPC ID. There's a bunch of information here that you need. Okay, let's check out the monitoring. So over here you see we have CPU utilization. This is another thing on its own. All right, so once you go live, you're able to check how CPU is being utilized. Maybe your platform is slowing down, realize that, oh, at this point you're getting a lot of traffic, so your CPU is like maxing out all the time and causing crashes and stuff like that. You get to see all of those checks over here. There's the security tab. Okay, so over here you see we have the launch wizard that AWS created for us by default. It is right here. And these are the so every security group comes with the inbound rules and then the outbound rules. Okay, so in the inbound rules we have so we are saying that we are accepting 80 because we chose HTTP and HTTPS. We are saying that any request coming on the HTTPS port or on the HTTP ports, it's allowed. Also, we have the port 22, which is open as well, which is SSH, the default SSH port. So any request coming on the SSH port 22 is allowed. Okay, so this server is a very, very open server that you can you can just SSH into and then do your thing. All right. I'm sure I will knock this server out once we are done with this tutorial, but then that's just by the way. Okay, so now that we have our EC2 server, which is very straightforward, this server is running Amazon Linux. Now next is to connect to it and then start our configuration. Okay, so over here we have connect. So we go to connect. Right now there's a number of options that you can use to connect to your instance. You can use the key pair way where you just validate in a program like PuTTY to SSH into your instance. You can use session manager, you can use SSH, you can use a whole lot of things, right? For me normally, because this is like my own account and I have access to your console and you also have access to your console, I just like to use the instance connect. So the instance connect, you're able to SSH into the instance. You're able to remotely access the instance right from the browser. You don't have to get out of the browser to do that. Like you come here, connect, you go to connect using EC2 instance connect. You have your IP address and then the username that you are connecting at with. If you have other usernames, you can use that as well. And then you just go to connect. So let's click connect. Let's see what we have. Okay, so this pops up another tab. It takes a short while to load, but all good. Okay, so this is spinning. Excellent. So here we are, Amazon Linux 2. We are in our EC2 server. Okay, this is really exciting. I love this. Okay, so so this is Amazon Linux 2023. If you're in Ubuntu, you'd have something different. Okay, so we see you have EC2 at look at this something. You see our public IP is 54.175, but once you connect, it says what? EC2 user at IP 172.3.1, which is the private IP. So that's the private IP of the internal instance. And you're trying to connect to the instance right within your network, not outside your network. Okay, so it just uses the private IP. But if you're connecting from, like let's say your laptop, maybe a client on a laptop or something, you definitely need a public IP and not the private IP. So that's very important. Okay, so now that we are in, we are going to run our commands to set up our Nginx, our PHP project. We are going to set up our server blocks and all of that stuff. Okay, so to start with, let's elevate our privileges, right? Okay, so now we are elevating to the super user, okay, which is the sudo su command, right? Now, if you don't do this, there are a whole lot of things you need to be able to like run. There are some commands that need that elevated level of privileges, okay. So the first thing we are going to do is you are going to install our package. We are going to install PHP, we are going to install Nginx, we are going to install Git, because we need Git to pull the package from our repo. Okay, so we are going to install Git. Now this is fresh, there's absolutely nothing on it. Okay, so we are going to do all that installation right over here. Okay, so we run this command. So DNF. Now previously you do something like yam install or something like that, right? But like I said, Amazon Linux 23, we are using DNF as the package manager. Okay, it's really nice to use this. I think it feels faster, definitely. I know it's more efficient and stuff like that. Okay, so DNF install. Now, mind you, this command they are going to type in, I won't say it's necessary to learn it by rote and have every single command in your head. I don't think it's realistic to say that, because in our lives as engineers, there are so many things you have to keep in your mind, and you don't necessarily need to chew everything right from the top of your head, okay? Because sometimes in a production environment with all the pressure on you, it's easy to forget something. All right, but you need to know what you are doing, so you don't just copy and paste commands as it is. You actually know what is happening, but that doesn't mean that you need to chew everything bit by bit. Okay, so you can always have all your scripts somewhere, things that you reuse all the time. Unless something changes, then you go in there and change it. But aside that, you don't need to swallow everything at the top of your mind. Okay, it helps avoid mistakes as much as possible. Sometimes with the configuration, there's a lot going on there. It's easy to forget to adjust something or change something or stuff like that, and it can create frustration. All right, so normally I always keep my script somewhere that I can always refer to later, but I understand what every single line is doing. Okay, so we are going to install OpenSSL, right? And then we are going to install PHP 8.2. Okay, we are going to install PHP 8.2 FPM. All right, so this is the fast CGI process manager, right? So PHP-FPM is very important, especially with using with Nginx. If your server is Apache, you may not need it, but with Nginx, that is what Nginx uses to pass requests to the PHP service itself, right? So PHP-FPM is like a request handler. I will explain more of that very soon. Okay, so PHP-FPM, PHP 8.2 CLI, right? PHP 8.2 BC Math. Okay, now these are all various PHP extensions that you need. Okay, they are used behind the scenes for PHP. So Laravel uses a lot of these extensions for various things, and they are the very core extensions that most PHP projects need, right? So without having them, you end up having some errors being thrown in your project. Okay, so these are the very core stuff that you need. So PHP 8.2 MB string. Okay, also mind you, I will make the script to this setup available on my GitHub, so it's right in the description. You can check it out. All the commands that I'm using in this tutorial will be there, so you can always refer to it too as well. Okay, they are going to install PHP 8.2 PDO, right? We can do PHP 8.2 XML, right? Now you can go further to each extension, research on it to see what each one does. Okay, but I'm not going to go that too much deeply into it. It's going to take forever, okay, because it's a lot, right? They have PHP 8.2 zip. All right, you realize that all the extensions you are installing come prefixed with the actual version of PHP you want. Because if you are using PHP 8.1, then you need to install the PHP 8.1 version of the extensions. If you are using PHP 8.3, you need to install that version of the extensions as well. Okay, so we have PHP 8.2 GD, right? So these are the very core extensions that normally you will need, okay, for your PHP project. Okay, so now we add y. So yes to, we are saying that, hey, whatever prompt that comes, you want to say yes to it. Okay, so now we run the command. Okay, so I love when I see pass. It's just beautiful. Okay, so DNF is pulling these packages and installing everything. So over here, it takes a few minutes, but it takes just a few minutes, sometimes just a minute, and then it installs everything that you need for the PHP. That's all of these things behind the scenes. So this is our script running. Okay, so let's just wait a moment to finish with our verifying. Okay, so this is complete now. All right, perfect. Right now, we are not going to need this extension I'm come to install, but you definitely need it, okay? Because in a real life, you connect to a database, or you connect to some type of relation, some type of DB somewhere, and you need the right driver for it, okay? In the case of MariaDB and MySQL, you need this package. So PHP DNF install PHP MySQL ND. Okay, you need that if you intend on connecting to a database. You will need that particular package as well. Very important. Else, it's not going to work. So you're going to have yes to it. Okay, so that is also complete. Now let me type clear to clear the screen. Okay, now the next thing we're going to install is Nginx. Okay, so DNF install Nginx, right? Why? So we're going to install Nginx as well. It doesn't take long. It's really straightforward. They are going to install Git as well. Install Git. Okay, so that will install GitHub so that we can be able to run Git commands on our server. Okay, this is like really beautiful, right? It's very fast too, as you can see. Okay, now the next thing we need for a Laravel project, typical Laravel project or a PHP project with dependencies, is Composer, right? So we can do DNF install Composer, right? Then Y. Okay, so now we are installing Composer 2 as well over here. And so we see the size and everything, and that is also complete. Okay, so we've installed like all the key packages. So now let's check to make sure that we have the right installation stuff. So let's do PHP. So you see we have PHP 8.2.3. Okay, we have Composer V. So oh wait, I think Composer is Composer version, if I'm not mistaken. Right, yeah, so we have Composer version 2.5.8 to install as well. Okay, I think Nginx too. Nginx, okay. Yeah, so we have Nginx version 1.26.2. Okay, that's it. So all our stuff, they are properly installed. Now we need to check whether Nginx is running. Okay, our web server is running. So we do systemctl, which is an Amazon Linux or a normal Linux command. If you don't have this installed, you just have to do DNF install systemctl. Okay, so systemctl status Nginx. Okay, so this lets us know whether Nginx is running or not. Okay, because you have a web server, you want to know whether the web server is actually running or it is not running. Okay, if your web server is not running, then obviously it cannot forward requests to your app. So you need to check this to make sure that it is running. Now it says that inactive or dead, so it is not running. Okay, now so we'll do systemctl. We can do restart Nginx. Okay, now we'll do systemctl status Nginx. Okay, so now you see it says loaded and it's active. Now it says running. So now our Nginx server is actually running. Okay, so let's clear this from here. Okay, now let's go back to our IP address, the one we previously opened. Okay, so we have it right here. This is the public IPv4 address, and then let's go and then open that again in the browser, and then let's see what we have. Okay, so we have our server installed, right? So already we have the Nginx server installed, and once you install Nginx, this is the default page that it uses. You've not set up your own app or stuff like that, so this is the default page that it uses. Okay, now I'm going to explain to you how come we are getting this without any setup. Okay, it's a very important thing that you have to know. How come we are getting this? We've not configured anything. So where is Nginx doing all of this? Okay, so we can go in there and then check it out. But before we do that, I want us to set up our Laravel project. I want us to pull it in and then set the project up before we go back to Nginx and then connect the Nginx to our Laravel app. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so normally on your server you have your apps in the directory called the var www directory. Okay, so if you come here now, you have this .html file, you have this HTML directory over there. Okay, cool. So you can do cd HTML. Okay, and that is where you can have all your apps, or with Nginx you can configure Nginx to serve multiple apps, not just one app at a time. So it's not like a one app per server type of thing. You can have multiple apps on your server, and then Nginx will perfectly redirect or serve all of these apps based on your configuration. Okay, so we have the HTML folder, cd var www/html. Please, this is not compulsory. Sorry, it's not compulsory to put your project in var www.html. Okay, it can be anywhere on the EC2 instance. Okay, but then this is normally the standard. Okay, so in the HTML folder, we are now going to clone our GitHub repo. Okay, we are going to clone it and then pull in the project over here. All right, so we will run git clone. Okay, we will run git clone. So where is our project? Our project is right here. Okay, so we have the demo, the git over here. So I'll copy this and paste it off screen over here. All right, and we'll do a git clone. So let's type that right here. Okay, so we have successfully cloned the repo, right? So once we do an ls, so ls is saying list all the contents of the current directory that you are in. Okay, once you do an ls, you see we have demo Laravel app. Okay, so once you cd into the demo Laravel app, which is change directory into the demo Laravel app, once we do ls over there, you guys realize that we have all the things that we need over here. But let me do lsl. Okay, now lsl lets you see all the permissions that the folders have. Okay, which is very, very, very important. Okay, so we'll come back to this command some other time. Okay, so let me just clear this. Right now, the next thing is that for every Laravel install, you need the env. Remember that with the environment file, we do not commit that to the repository, so we'll need to create our own env. Okay, so for that we can do a nano.env. Okay, now this will create a fresh new file. So over here you see we have the new file over here, and then what I'm going to do is that I'm going to copy the current environment configurations on my PC. On a normal day we can do a new file here and then we do .env.production. Okay, so this will have your production parameters. So I'll copy and paste this right here. So I'll copy from the local env into the production env. Okay, and then I'm going to change app debug to false. Okay, so app debug to false means that obviously you don't want to leak like stack traces and full error messages to your application, so definitely you keep it at false. And then we have the usual env files. On the env production tool, you can provide your production database configuration right here, and then you can keep it there. Okay, so I'm going to copy this from here to here. Okay, so over here we have the env copied over here perfectly with all the parameters that we need. Okay, so in a real world, you will not be copying your env from your local to a new server all the time. Right, so normally what I do is that you can keep your env param in AWS parameter store. So for the AWS parameter store, what you can do is that anytime you are setting up an instance, all you do is that you copy the parameters from the AWS parameter store directly into your env, and then it works that way. Okay, so you have it there all the time without having to now copy and paste it from your your local. All right, so once we have this, I'm going to put in Control X on my keyboard. Now it gives me an option of saving the file, so I do yes. Okay, then it says write to .env, then I press enter. Okay, so now we have our env file. So once we do lsl, you realize that sorry, do lsa, sorry. Okay, so you realize that we have our .env file over here. What some people also like to do is that they will just rename the .env, the example, to .env as well. It works both ways. Okay, so Nano is like a default text editor of sort for Linux instances. Okay, so depending on the distribution you are running, you can either use Nano or something different. Okay, so now that we have our env set up, the next thing we are going to do is we are going to do our composer install, which is very important, right? But before we do the composer install, we know that for every Laravel app, we need to give some permissions to the Laravel app, the directories, else Laravel will not function well. Okay, because we need to give some type of write and read access to the storage directory and the bootstrap directory, else things will not work. Okay, so what we are going to do is that we are going to do those assigning of permissions to those directories that are important. Okay, so let's type those instructions and then see what they mean. So we have chmod Nginx. So I'm going to explain this real quick. Okay, www, right? So we have HTML. Okay, that's the path, the full path to our Laravel app. We go to the root var www html and then demo Laravel app. Okay, then we can do storage. Okay, right. So we have chmod blah blah blah. Once you run this, let's run this. Okay, so now this doesn't work because we didn't specify the mode. Okay, say we need to we need to give it read, write, execute to the directory. If you don't do that, you are going to get like permission denied errors all the time. Okay, so the command over here was a wrong command. I just type chmod, so change mode recursively for that particular storage folder, but I didn't specify the actual command, the actual mode that it should use. Okay, so it says invalid mode. All right, so what I'm going to do is that first of all, I'm going to make the owner of that particular folder Nginx, right? That's Nginx user. Nginx comes with its own users. I'm going to make the owner of that folder Nginx, so that when the requests come in, Nginx will have the right access to those folders. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to do this instead of chmod, I'll make this chown. Okay, so change ownership, right, to Nginx. So now we do this. So now this works, and we are going to do the same thing for the bootstrap folder. Okay, Laravel requires this, so change ownership to Nginx for the bootstrap folder. Okay, so we've cleared that out already. Now we can come and do the chmod. So I can do chmod recursively, then I can do 775. Okay, so read, write, execute, but then you are saying that it shouldn't have execute access to people outside like the server. Okay, so it's for security reasons. You don't want people outside your server to be able to just access certain files and stuff on your Laravel app. Okay, so we have that. So the storage folder, let's execute this. Okay, oh, so no such file directory, HTML. Oh, look at that. chmod 775. It says cannot access Nginx, no such file or directory. Am I making a mistake somewhere? Oh, this is for chown. Forgot. Okay, so let's do this. Right, so now this works, and now let's do the same thing for the bootstrap directory. Right, so bootstrap. Okay, so now let's do clear, and then let's check. Let's do lsl. Okay, so this lists all the directories with their permissions. Okay, so now let's do something. So you see now all the files here are root access, but bootstrap and then storage, you realize that we've changed the user and then the group to Nginx, right? And if you look at the permissions, you know we have read, write, execute, but we do not have write for storage. Okay, so people outside cannot just write to your storage or stuff like that. Okay, but Nginx, which is the server, which is the user that will be executing once your Laravel app is running, will need write access to it, and then we've given it that type of write access to those directories. But aside that, there's nothing you can do with all of the other existing directories aside your root user. Okay, so that's something very important that we've done there, right? So now let's do composer install to install our dependencies for the Laravel app. Okay, so composer install no dev. Okay, we don't want to install dev dependencies on your project, just the original dependency. So composer install no dev. Let's do that. So root, yep. Okay, so our project is being set up. Our Laravel project is installing. Nice, everything installed successfully. Okay, so now basically we have our Laravel project set up. We've cloned it from GitHub. We've installed the dependencies. We've set the right permissions. So there's one more component to all of this, which is the Nginx server. Okay, if you go to Nginx, we are still getting redirected to the default Nginx page, but we want to be redirected to our Laravel app. Okay, very important. So what we do is that now we go to the Nginx configuration and then change our configurations from there. Okay, so we go to cd etc. Normally you find a configuration in etc. Sometimes you find it somewhere different, but we go to etc. Okay, and then you see that etc, there's a lot of folders over here, and we have PHP-FPM, we have php.ini, and then we'll also have Nginx somewhere right here. So Nginx is right here. Okay, so we'll do cd Nginx. Okay, now let's clear this. Now let's see what we have in the Nginx folder. So we have conf.d, we have defaults.d, and we have nginx.conf. Okay, so now nginx.conf is sort of like the, let me increase the zoom here, right? So nginx.conf is like the default Nginx configuration. And that .conf file is what is handling this particular request that you see here. That is how come we are able to access this, even though we've not configured anything. Okay, so let's open that file to see what we have in there. So nano nginx.conf. Perfect. So now this is the default Nginx configuration. Okay, so we have Nginx uses a concept you call directives. Okay, these are like instructions on what your, like on how your server should handle requests and treat the server and stuff like that. So all of these are various directives. So you realize that the first thing that we did was we changed the user of the bootstrap directory and then the storage directory in our Laravel app to Nginx, right? So you see over here, the first line says user Nginx. So that's Nginx's default user. Okay, then worker processes. Okay, the number of processes that Nginx should spin up to handle your app or to handle requests to your app. Normally you leave it at auto. You can specify a particular value as well, but for the purpose of what we are doing, we are going to use auto. Now error log, anytime somebody makes a request to your server and then maybe there's something like bad gateway or stuff like that, you need to know where like the errors will be logged, where you can look at the log files for the server, or something is misconfigured. You need to have a place you can look at the files, right? Now the default for Nginx is var log Nginx and then error.log. Okay, that is where you're able to view the Nginx, the Nginx how do you call it, errors. Now the process identifier, okay, so that one is also like the PID for Nginx. Okay, you want to know what the process identifier, every service that runs on the Linux it has like a process identifier, and this is where you can also get it. Okay, and now these are dynamic modules. I'm not going to get into this right now, okay, but these are basically additional configurations that you can load, additional modules that you can load for your Nginx server, to just basically customize the server. Now Nginx is very modular. Okay, it gives you a base template, and from that template you extend it with various components, just like building, let's say, a front-end app, and then you have components for different functionality. Okay, it's sort of like that in Nginx. It allows you to define specific configurations for specific sites or some specific functionality in a modular way, which makes it very beautiful to work with. Okay, So we have the worker connections directly. Okay, that's the number of simultaneous worker connections that can be spinned up in your server instance. Now we have this HTTP log format. Okay, so Nginx has something we call the access logs. So when you go to the access logs file, you are able to see all the requests that have been made to your web server. So Nginx logs all of these things, and you're able to see their IP addresses. Okay, now this is the format for the logs. Okay, so we'll check the access log very soon so that you see how the access logs look like, right? So we have the it logs the remote address, that is the IP address. It logs the type of request, whether it's a GET request, a push request. It logs the status of the request. So if it was a 500 server error, it will log that. If it was a 200, it will log that. Sometimes it's very important for these access logs, especially when, for example, there's this bad person trying to attack your server. You want to know where their IP is, or you want to ban their IP or blacklist their IP. These access logs are really, really helpful. Okay, and then for these access logs too, we said they are located at var log nginx access log. Okay, so and you can always change it. You are free to change this to any file that you want, and then I'll show you that really soon. Okay, so and then there are a bunch of other configurations over here. Let's go down. Okay, so right now this is where things get very interesting. Okay, so this server block here is the reason why we are seeing the default value over here, this default page. Okay, so now let's look at what is going on here. On top of the server block, we have something called we are including this file, this over here, this folder, which is conf.d and then start.conf, right? So what happens is that you can configure Nginx to listen to a lot of websites. So you can have, let's say, app.domain.com, then you can have another app2.domain.com, another app3.domain.com, another app4.domain.com, all on one server. Example, you have a full stack app, one is React and one is, let's say, Laravel, like we did here. We have the Laravel on the server. You can also have the React app, the built React app on the server as well. And you use this directive called server directive to say that anytime somebody accesses app.blah.blah.blah.com, serve this particular folder. Anytime somebody accesses this particular one, serve this particular folder. Okay, so you can instruct Nginx to redirect your request to different directories and different apps on your platform, on your instance. Okay, so this is very important. So currently it says we are listening on port 80, right? And for every request that comes on port 80, which is the root request, redirect it to this particular HTML file. So usr.share/nginx/html. So this HTML folder, right, it contains the default Nginx, the site we are seeing here, right? That is where it is found, which is why even without configuring any servers, once we go to the root IP address, we get the default Nginx file. Okay, now the error page 2 is at 404.html or so, and then we also have the error pages for 500 and stuff like that. So all of those pages you see when you try to access and then there's something wrong with your server, this is how they are handled. All right, now this include over here start.conf. That is where we are going to define the configuration for our app. Okay, so you can have multiple server blocks. Now, because you only have one app, we are going to have just one server block, and we are going to create a new file in this directory conf.d for that particular server block. So once Nginx is spinning up, it will automatically include it. It's just like writing a PHP project and you are including a PHP file in the main file, right? It's sort of like that. That's how it works. So it will include that configuration in the Nginx process and then run whatever you have there. So what we are going to do is we are going to comment this out. Okay, because we don't want this. We want to redirect to our own thing. Okay, so we are going to comment out every line with hash. Okay, so we've commented out everything over here. So now we press Ctrl X and then we we save changes with Y and then we press enter. Okay, so now anytime you make configuration changes to your Nginx, you have to restart it. So you're going to do systemctl restart Nginx. Okay, so now let's restart this. Okay, now let's go back to our IP and then reload and see what we have. Okay, so let's reload it now. Takes a few minutes. Now you see we have unable to connect. Okay, because now you've destroyed that configuration that was saving that file. So now there is nothing handling the request that you are making. So then you have the unable to connect error message. Okay, so now that we've done this, now we go back to now configure our own application to make it work with our Nginx. Okay, so let's clear this from the screen. Okay, so now let's go to ls. Now remember that Nginx loads all the configurations from this conf.d folder. Okay, so we go to cd.conf.d. Okay, and what we do is we create a new .conf file. So we do nano, so we can say demo laravel app.conf. As long as it ends with .conf, Nginx will automatically load it. You can name it anything that you want. So we say nano laravel app.conf, right? And then now we are going to type our own server block and then configure it to work with Nginx. Okay, so this is a new file. So I'm going to type everything line by line. I'm going to explain everything to you. Okay. Sorry, I love my water. Okay, so we have server. Yeah, this is acting very weird all the time. So we have server. Okay, now we have the closing and then the opening and the closing braces. So let's do this. Okay, at least thankfully Nginx is not indent sensitive, so I think we are a bit safe over there. So listen, the first directive is listen 80. Okay, now if you are going to listen for HTTPS, you are going to be listen 440. But then for HTTPS, you need to go further to install your SSL certificate and configure SSL and all of that stuff before you can do that. Okay, and you can create another server block too for it as well. Right, but now we are just doing HTTP, so we are going to listen on 80. Okay, and then we are going to do server name. Okay, so now the server name over here would have been your domain name, so it would have been app.domain.com or whatever you have. But because you don't have any server name, we are going to use the public IP of our instance, which is this. So we're going to copy this here and then we are going to paste it right here. Okay, so that's our server name. That's the public IP of the app that we are of the instance. Okay, now so that's the server name. So any request coming from this particular IP will be handled with whatever we are going to decide over here. Okay, now we are going to say that okay, the root folder of our app is this. So we know that for a Laravel app, the root folder is public. Like request, the entry points for the project is the public/index.php, right, for a Laravel app. So we are going to say the root folder for this project is www, then HTML. You guys remember where our Laravel app is located? /demo Laravel app. Okay, let me confirm the name of the project. Okay, so it's is it demo Laravel app? I think I got it here. Oh, yeah, right here. Sorry, demo Laravel app. Okay, so that's the name of the clone that we did. So demo Laravel app. If you get this wrong, it's not going to work. Okay, so demo Laravel app / the public directory. Then we put a semicolon there. Okay, then the file we are looking for as the entry point, we say the index file for it is index.php, right, which is normally the index file for the index.php is the file in the public directory, which is the entry point. Okay, so that's the index file, and normally people like to add index.html, index.htm. This is just standard practice, but hey, you can always just make an index.php and not add all of those things. I don't know, I just like to add it for some reason. It feels like I've covered every case. I don't know, maybe it just mental. Okay, now the next thing we type is location. Okay, so this is the location directive. Now let's type this and then let's see what it does. So I'm going to type this right here and then I'm going to explain to you what it does. Try files, URI. Okay, then URI this. Okay, then I'm going to do index.php. Okay, then we are going to do $query strength. Okay, and then we are going to close this. Okay, so now what this directive is saying that anytime a request starts from the root request, okay, which is your domain / rules, that's the root request. Now, so for example, if I do something like let's do this, let me just type in some examples over here. Okay, so if I do something like I'll comment it out. If I do something like app.domain.com / let's say about, right? For example, what Nginx is saying is, what you are saying is that, okay, when the request comes in like that, it will first check to see whether this about is a file in your public directory. Okay, if it's a file, it will return the file appropriately. Now, the reason being that PHP is not good at serving content. So Nginx does all this. So all your static files, your CSS, your JS file, your images, Nginx is the one that saves it. Okay. So it first needs to check whether this you are requesting is a file or is a directory, right? So it checks. So that's for the first option here. So it checks whether it's a file. That's the $URI. If it's not a file, it checks whether it's a directory, which is $URI /*. If it's not a directory, then it then passes it to the entry point of the Laravel app, which is the index.php. And then it passes along all the query parameters or the additional information you've passed in your request to index.php. Okay, so this is what the server block does. Oh, I close this. So now let's go to the next one. Okay, so now we have location, right? And then we have the tilde, and then we have .php. Okay, this is also a very important part of the directive that we need to understand. Okay, so let me indent this right here. And so this is a regular expression that says that any requests that are entering into the index.php, now I'm not going to serve it. I'm not Nginx here say I cannot serve PHP files. I cannot process PHP files. I need to pass it to whatever does the PHP processing. Okay, now at the first block over here, hey, you are handling the files, but once it's a PHP, the request is going to index.php, then hey, we have to pass it for Laravel and then the PHP-FPM, which is a process manager, to to do their work. All right. So that is what this is saying that hey, if the request is .php, then include fast CGI params. Okay. So this one will include certain let me say variables that fast CGI needs to process your script. Okay, like certain headers, certain scripts, certain content types and stuff like that fast CGI needs. Okay, so it will include those, right? Then the next thing is fast CGI pass, okay, which is Unix. So I'll explain this to run. Okay, so run PHP-FPM, right? And then www.sock, all right? I'll explain what this does and how we got to this point. So fast CGI pass, right? Now we remember Nginx doesn't process PHP. It's not a PHP interpreter. So when a request comes, Nginx has to pass the request or the scripts that is needed to fast CGI. Now, fast CGI is the one that will load the PHP interpreter to process your PHP and then return the results back to Nginx, and then Nginx will return the results back to the browser. Okay, now they both need a portal to communicate, and the portal to communicate is what we specified over here as run PHP-FPM www.sock. So the location of this www.sock can vary, okay, based on the installation of PHP-FPM you are using. Okay, but I'm going to show you where we can find it once we get to making some changes in a PHP-FPM file. We are going to see where this is actually found. Okay, now if this is not there, Nginx will throw an error anytime you try to make a request to your app. All right, so in fact, before I continue, let's duplicate this tab. Okay, and then let's check out this particular to make sure that this particular file is there. So we said it's at run PHP-FPM, right? It's in that particular directory. You're going to do sudo su. You're going to do cd run Okay, now let's check out what is here. So you see we have a number of directories here. So we have PHP-FPM right here. So cd PHP-FPM. Okay, now let's do ls. So you see we have www.sock over here, which is a sockets file that Nginx will use to communicate with PHP-FPM. So this is rightly available here, so then we know we'll not get any errors. Okay, now you can find it based on, there are times that I've installed certain PHP-FPM that is not there, that you have to find a file somewhere else, or you have to use a different type of socket connection. And sometimes you can use TCP IP for that particular communication instead of the socket way, right? Okay, now the next thing is fast CGI param. Okay, then we are passing the name of the script. So script file name. Okay, and then we'll say real path roots. Okay, and then we'll say fast CGI. I hope I'm typing everything right here. Script name, right? And then we'll do fast CGI. Okay, I'm going to explain this real quick. So don't worry. Document roots dollar. Oh, what did I just do? I think I pressed something. Okay, document roots dollar document root. Okay. Right, so now let's see what these two lines have written says. Okay, now this particular line here, right, you are passing the relative part, the full relative part of the script. So in our case, it will pass /var/www/html/demo Laravel app slash whatever the script is that is supposed to execute our particular request. It will pass everything to the fast CGI processor to handle the execution, right? And now for the document root, we are saying that, hey, the document root is what we've defined here. We are saying that this is the root of your project, which is var www html demo Laravel public. So we need to pass all of these things to fast CGI so that it knows how to handle all our, our files and stuff like that. Okay, so basically this is what this script does. It looks scary at first, but once you break it down, you understand everything that is going on here. And guys, I don't have all of this kept off head, right? I have a script that I'm referring to, okay? But then once you do it several times, something just comes to you naturally, like setting the server name, the root, the index, the location, the try files. It's very easy once you do it a number of times. But for the purposes of the video, I want to make sure that I don't miss any step, okay? Because I'm teaching you guys how to handle it. Okay, so now we have the location. This is also something I'm going to explain very soon. .ht. Okay, then we are going to say deny all. So in certain installations we have a .ht access file, or there's this .ht something file in the public directory. Okay, now you don't want anybody to have access to that type of file. So this particular directive is saying that any request that matches something that starts with .ht, deny that particular request so that it doesn't go through. Okay, so that's basically what we've typed here. Now the next thing is what happens is that, like I said, you have multiple apps set up on your Nginx installation. Okay, and you want to make sure that you are keeping all your records properly, like your error logs. You don't want error logs of one app to mix up with the error logs of another app. Okay, so for this particular server, we can say that we are going to do error log. Okay, we are going to say the logs for this should be stored in var log Nginx. Right, hey, sorry, I think I spelled it wrong. Nginx, then demo Laravel app, then error.log. Okay, and then we are also going to say the access log of this should be var log Nginx. I like the name Nginx. Demo Laravel app and access.log. Okay, so any type of request that's coming to this particular application, it will be logged separately in its demo Laravel app.error log and then Laravel app.access log. Okay, and then basically we are done with our configuration. We have to make sure that our curly braces is over here. Okay, so this is all good. So we have our server, we have our root directory. We are saying that, hey, whatever PHP requests are coming, pass it to PHP-FPM. In a server like Apache doesn't use PHP-FPM unless you specifically define it. Okay, Apache uses mod PHP, and there's also the separate configuration for that. Okay, so now we are done. We are going to press Ctrl X, and we are going to press Y to save it, and then we are going to write it to demo Laravel app.conf. Okay, so now let's open it again to make sure that it's right there. Okay, so our configuration is right there correctly. Okay, now what you do is that you can run nginx.t. Okay, now this makes sure that whatever syntax that you've put over there, there's no errors inside. So once I run nginx.t, it checked all the syntax and it checks all the configuration at the configuration that we provided and say, oh, syntax is okay, test is successful. Now that we are done with the Nginx configuration, we can go ahead and then systemctl restart Nginx. Okay, right, so we do that. Okay, now before that, we need to do some additional configurations with PHP-FPM. Okay, we need to make sure that PHP-FPM is sort of executing under the right username. Okay, like Nginx, like it's listening under the right username Nginx, right? Else it cannot execute anything because it doesn't have that type of access. Okay, so what we do is that we need to go to this directory. I think CD, most of the configurations are in CD. So CD etc PHP-FPM. Okay, .d. Okay, so let's check ls. So we have www.conf over there. So we're going to say nano www.conf. Okay, right. So this opens that file. So now let's see what we have there. So you realize that over here the user is Apache, right? So then it says that the user is mandatory. If the group is not set, the default users group will be used, right? So if we do not change this particular user to Nginx, then that is a problem. Okay, so we need to change this and then the group to Nginx, because Nginx is the one that has the read-write access to the appropriate directories. Okay, then there's a bunch of other parameters here. So remember we said that fast EGI will listen on a particular socket, right? So you realize that socket is defined over here. So we have the listen directive here, which is run PHP-FPM and then www.sock, which is exactly what we defined in our configuration, right? So you always have to check to confirm that at this listen and then the users are set before you continue to to access your app, else you're going to get issues. So it's going to throw an error. Okay, so now we can press Ctrl X and then we can Y and then we can save it. Now we need to restart PHP-FPM as well. So systemctl restart PHP-FPM. Okay, perfect. So now we've restarted Nginx, we've restarted PHP-FPM. So now let's go to our site and see whether our Laravel app works now. So reload. Ha! Beautiful. So now we have our Laravel app here. We've successfully deployed it. This is nice. Okay, so you realize that it's very, very simple. Once you know what you are doing, once you understand all the commands going in there, it's very easy to set it up. Okay, most of the time it takes a lot of try and error. Like you have to practice, and most of these tips that I was giving you, I didn't find out because I automatically knew. I tried, I failed, it wasn't working. Then I had to bang my head against the wall to figure out how it works. Then, oh, okay, I was supposed to change this user, I was supposed to add this, I was supposed to remove this, I was supposed to use this instead of that. Okay, you need to, and the only way you can be able to find out all of these things for yourself is if you practice on your own. So beyond this tutorial, go back there, practice on your own, try to see whether you can set up the Laravel app from scratch on your own on the server. Okay, maybe try for a simple front-end project. See whether you can adapt the configuration you've used to serve your build of your React app. Play around. It could be Node, it could be something similar, right? And that is the only way you'll be able to really understand everything that is going on from ground up. If there's a command you do not get, I advise that you just put it in. There's ChatGPT. There's a whole lot of AI tools available. Put the command in there, tell it to explain it to you, and they do good work at explaining it, and that will really help you broaden your understanding. Okay, without just putting in commands over there. What is PHP-FPM, right? How is Nginx relating to PHP? What is PHP-FPM doing behind the scenes? What's the Unix socket? Okay, these are things that are very key for you to be successful and for you to differentiate yourself as an engineer. Okay, all right. So this is it. Thank you so much. We have a Laravel app here. Thank you so much for sticking to this video. I apologize if this video was long. I really wanted to explain this and challenge myself to bring you this content. All right, so please, if there's anything I missed or there's anything I mis-explained, please feel free to let me know in the comment section, and then I'm really open to learning more and then correcting any mistakes that I made. If you also like this content, please feel free, subscribe, like. It really gives me more motivation to make such contents like this. I really appreciate your support, and let me know if there's any other thing, any other video you want me to do, any other content that you want me to teach you on, and then we'll take it from there. So thank you so much for joining me on this video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.